Stories from Real Life is sponsored by Forever, the digital shareable platform that preserves all of your precious memories forever.
This is Melvin E. Edwards, the host of Stories from Real Life. One of the things I'm passionate about when I'm not doing this podcast is genealogy. And if you've ever researched ancestors, you begin to understand how short generations really are. That's why it's important to preserve those memories while you still have the chance. And that's where Forever comes in. Forever is the world's first permanent, shareable digital home for all your memories. Look, your photos, videos, and family stories deserve more than temporary cloud storage. With a Forever storage account, your files are guaranteed safe and protected for your lifetime plus 100 years. Your lifetime plus 100 years. And here's what I love. No endless monthly fees. You can make a one-time payment or break it down to 24 monthly installments and you own your storage. It's all backed by the Forever Guarantee Fund, built to preserve your legacy for generations. Check out my website, podcastreallife.com, and click on sponsors or the link in the show notes. Your memories are the stories from your real life. Forever, make sure they truly last forever.
Today on Stories from Real Life, we sit down with Russell Van Brocklen, a New York State Senate-funded dyslexia researcher whose groundbreaking Word Analysis First program has changed the trajectory of students once labeled as struggling, lazy, or not college material. His inaugural class took highly motivated but underperforming high school juniors and seniors, and in one school year, lifted their writing skills by 7 to 8 grade levels, all the way to the average range of the GRE Analytical Writing Assessment, for under $900 per student. Every one of them went to college. Every one of them graduated. None needed accommodations. This is Stories from Real Life with Melvin E. Edwards, and today's story is Russell Van Brocklen's. The truth about dyslexia that schools don't teach.
You are listening to Stories from Real Life, a podcast by engaging storytellers for engaged story listeners. Here's your host, author and journalist, Melvin E. Edwards.
Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Stories from Real Life. I'm your host, Melvin E. Edwards. Thank you for joining me for the podcast where our personal stories remind us how much we can learn from each other. Today, we sit down with Russell Van Brocklen, a New York State Senate-funded dyslexia researcher whose groundbreaking Word Analysis First program has changed the trajectory of students once labeled as struggling, lazy, or not college material. So, Russell, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
I've got this question first. It's a personal one. Are you related to Norm Van Brocklen?
Yes, actually, I'm a distant cousin. I think I got a funny story for you with that.
Okay.
When I went to high school. That was, it was a long time ago. The football coach asked me the same question, and he said, "Okay, I want to consider you to be the starting quarterback of the high school football team." And I said, "Well, we got a bit of a problem there." I said, "Go grab a random female cheerleader." And he did. And I said, "See how far she could throw the football." And then I tried it. She beat me by a lot. The genetics didn't transfer over to football.
It's weird how that works, but you got a great name, and you got the genetic connection. Close enough, I guess.
Yeah, I was more of a runner than I was a distance runner, not a football player.
Okay. All right. I get it. All right. So what first drew you to dyslexia research, and how did you evolve into a program significant enough to receive New York State Senate funding?
Well, that's kind of more of an interesting story. I was not supposed to do this. I was supposed to be a bureaucrat in the New York State government. So what happened is I applied. It was the end of the 90s. I wanted to know how laws work, not some course I wanted to know. So I applied to the New York State Assembly internship program, and I said, "Here's my neuropsych. I got a first grade reading and writing level." And the manager freaked. He said, "This cannot work." Went to the speaker. They said, "You have to accommodate this kid." So they literally pulled me out of the legislative office building and put me in the Capitol in the Majority Leaders Program and Council's office that ran the assembly day to day. And I went there because they had 3 administrative assistants who could help with my horrific writing. But that was a graduate internship, not an undergrad one. Great for me. So at the end, I ended up, I gave them a long oral presentation that went on for hours instead of a paper, which is standard accommodation for me back then. And they recommended 15 credits of A- or 3.67. So then it goes back to the political science department of the State University New York Center at Buffalo, our flagship public university. They didn't like the accommodations that the state government came up with. So they said, well, here's your 15 credits of F. Do you have any idea what that does to a GPA?
Torpedoes.
So that, yeah, I said, I'm done with the discrimination. So then I asked, where can I go and learn how to read and write in graduate school? And my professor said, law school. So I go to law school, and my second day in contracts, Professor Warner calls on me. And what they do is they use the Socratic method. They crush you until you can eventually adapt. That didn't happen to me. And what I found out later is when dyslexics go to grad school, we own the place day one or soon thereafter. So I didn't respond as a student. I responded as his equal. He kept trying to get me every which way he could think. I'm yelling at him. He's yelling at me. It goes on 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. He finally had a call time. He said, you couldn't be any more correct. I have to move on to the next case. I learned to read within a month. I learned to write within a couple of years. Then I went back to the New York State Senate, and I said, I want you to fund my research. It took years to get through the state education department and everybody else. Eventually, I went back to my old high school, the Averill Park Central School District, right outside of Albany, New York. We took their best and brightest students who were highly motivated, highly intelligent, dyslexic juniors and seniors, college bound. They were reading and writing at the middle school level. One class period a day for the school year. They came out writing average of entering graduate students based on the graduate records exam analytical writing assessment. They all went on to college. They all graduated GPAs of 2.5 to 3.6. Cost to New York State taxpayers less than $900 a kid. And that's how I got started.
Congratulations. That sounds incredible. So before you began this program, what did you believe about struggling learners that most educators or parents don't know?
I just went and I took everything. I took communications, political science, business, law school, MBA programs, and multiple. I took professors, not institutions. I burned through their best professors, and then I'd go on to the next institution. And I just did that for years and years and years until I finally figured this out.
You emphasized word analysis first. At what moment or discovery convinced you that this was a better starting point than traditional learning instruction?
Well, my field is full of junk science, so let's go to the source. This is the best book in my field. It's called Overcoming Dyslexia by Sally Shaywitz, second edition, medical doctor from Yale. That's dyslexia. So do you see how the back part of your brain has this massive neuroactivity? Do you see how the back part of my brain has next to nothing? But you see how the front part of my brain is about 2.5 times overactive. So what I did in the initial course is I used that front part of the brain. Dr. Shaywitz said it's articulation followed by word analysis. And that's why I chose the graduate records exam analytical writing section. Analytical articulation to me was the same thing. But when I presented this in New York City in 2006, the problem was we were dealing with the elite, the most motivated, the most intelligent kids, and there's very few of them. So when I was asked, how do we adapt this to typical students, I had to take 8 years off to figure that out. So what I eventually figured out is we had to flip it over to word analysis, followed by articulation. But then I still couldn't get the kids to do anything. Then I realized, back with the example that I gave you before, how I just dominated in law school. It just so happened, I was in politics. I liked it, which means I was going to like, and I did extraordinarily well in law school. So that's when I kind of figured out the idea of a speciality, what the kids were really interested in. And once I started doing that, then I found I could get them to do things. But when we're looking at applying this, so something that your listeners can take away, something that they can apply tonight. Do you know any dyslexic elementary school kids ever? Okay, so I'm just going to tell you what typically happens. I want your audience to be able to leave with something they can apply tonight and really make a big breakthrough with their kids. Typically what happens is they're in elementary school and I'm told their kids are writing essentially randomly placed misspelled words. The teachers, the parents, the consultants have no idea what to do. So I'm going to show you how applying word analysis followed by articulation can get you to write basic sentences. So I'm just going to give you an example of a student that I use a lot. Her name is Sarah. She's 10 years old at the time, in 5th grade, reading and writing at the 2nd grade level. Her favorite thing in the world is swimming. She's on the swim team, gets in the pool every chance she can get. So what we need to do is to show her how to write a basic 3-word sentence. So this is really simple. The first thing you're going to do is open up a laptop. Not an iPad, not an iPhone, certainly not handwriting. A laptop with a real keyboard. You're going to type out hero, +, what are we talking about? And then Sarah's going to copy it. You've been told that copying is bad. It's fine here. Professor James Collins, Strategies for Struggling Writers, Default Writing Strategy of Copying. So she types out the same thing. Now we have hero, +, what are we talking about? We're going to swap out hero for Sarah. Sarah, +, what are we talking about? Now you're going to make a list of 10 things she really likes and 10 things she hates. The first thing on her list that she really likes is swimming. So we got Sarah, +, what are we talking about? We're going to swap out what are we talking about for swimming. Sarah, + swimming. See how we got there? Okay. Now, I'm going to try to fool you with the simplest questions ever. If you answer them correctly, this works. If you don't, it's not going to work. And this is when most people have an epiphany in what dyslexia really is. Do you think I'll be able to fool you?
Probably.
Okay.
We'll see.
Well, they're the simplest questions ever. So we got Sarah, + swimming. Okay. Sarah, + swimming. We need to swap out the + for a word. Here's my question. Does Sarah like or dislike swimming?
Likes.
Okay. Now go ahead and create the 3-word sentence.
Sarah likes swimming.
But that's not what I asked. Do I have you pretty confused right now? All right. This is your are you prepared for your epiphany?
I am prepared.
Okay. I asked, does Sarah like or dislike swimming? As an educated person, you automatically added the S and put it and fixed it. Sarah's dyslexic. She doesn't know how to add the S. Now, how do we get her to add the S? If you're Bill Gates' grandkids, you're going to use an Orton-Gillingham multisensory structured language approach. This is what the wealthy family's been using since the 1950s. You see it, touch it, hear it. Costs $75,000 a year for 4 to 5 years. Now, if you have an extra $500,000 sitting around, that's not including living expenses. That's your solution. For the rest of us, let's just try to do this tonight. What we're going to do is we're going to have Sarah read what she wrote out loud. Sarah likes swimming, because I asked, do you like or dislike? She said like. Sarah likes swimming. I would say, Sarah, does that sound generally correct? She's going to say no. Then I'm going to say fix it. Sarah likes swimming. We practice that for 10 likes and 10 dislikes. Now we move. Now, do you see how like and dislike is a simple form of word analysis?
Yes.
Okay. So again, I'm going to go back to page 78, figure 23, that overactive front part of the brain. We're pulling that forward with word analysis. From the back part of the brain, where just nothing's going on. So now we're going to go because reason 1. Give me a reason why a 10-year-old girl would like swimming, a simple one.
She lives in a hot area and it cools her off in the summertime.
Sarah likes swimming because she lives in a hot area and she wants this cool. Let's just go with a hot area. Sarah likes swimming because she lives in a hot area. Now, do you see how we probably have a whole mess of misspelled words? Here's how we fix that. First thing we do is we tell Sarah to put a period down. Then we say, read it out loud. Does it sound generally correct? Forget about the spelling. If it doesn't, we tell her to fix it. This gets rid of the nasty grammar. There's about half of the medium ones and some of the minor stuff. We don't care about minor stuff or medium stuff. Teachers can deal with that. They have trouble with the nasty stuff, which we just eliminated. Then I asked Sarah, I tell her, once that's done, if there's a misspelled word, you have to keep retyping it until it's correct. She's going to keep telling herself, I'm not going to make that mistake again. I'm not going to make that mistake again. And she keeps doing it. Somewhere between 3 and 13 times, she's going to retype it. The more she retypes, the more she concentrates to about 9 to 13 times. Sometimes you can see sweat coming down their forehead. It's so intense. That's where the magic happens until everything's spelled correctly. All right. And then you go on to the next one until everything is spelled correctly. 10 likes and 10 dislikes. Then it's reason 1 and reason 2. 20 times until it's all spelled correctly. Then reason 1, reason 2, and reason 3 until it's all spelled correctly. If you're talking about a 5th grader who's 10, you're probably looking at somewhere around 4 to 6 weeks. A 9th grader could take 3 to 4 months, a 10 to 15 minute session, 3 or 4 sessions a week. The older you are, the quicker you pick this up. Why is that important? Because Orton Gillingham is the exact opposite. The older you are, the longer it takes. This will take your kid from writing at the kindergarten, beginning 1st grade level, usually to the end of 2nd, beginning 3rd grade level. The reading here, this is important. If you can write it, you can read it. So if you can write it, you can read it. So your reading automatically increases. And that's how you can learn how to do this. And I just showed you within about 10 minutes.
That's really cool. That's really cool. All right. So what's the biggest misconception educators have about dyslexia and other language-based learning differences?
Well, I'm going to go back to the science again. You see the back part of the brain for you is how massively overactive it is. So let's look at so I'm going to just go over what happened when you were in school. Do you remember that if you did 2 things correctly? Number 1, you planned your study habits properly. And then number 2, you worked really hard and then you did really well. Sound familiar? That's it. 80+% of the population, that what works in schools. All right. Neurodiverse is completely different. We could work 10 times harder than you and still fail because school, until grad school, is essentially the back part of the brain where we got virtually nothing going on. So the big misconception is, how do we fix this? It's a temporary period until we get the student to reach grade level, and then you can put them back and everything else. So rule number 1, during this intervention period, you have to focus on the kid's speciality. This also works for ADD and ADHD kids. Do you know any of them?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know a kid who has ADHD?
Yes.
Change their name so we protect their privacy. What's the made-up name?
Michael.
Michael, tell me about Michael. What age? What does he love doing?
He's in high school. He likes to play drums.
Okay. Well, his parents have to be so happy with that.
He's medicated, I believe. But yeah, he likes to play drums. That's sort of, it's a stress.
Okay, so he likes playing drums. Now, if we were to focus on improving his academic concerns, let's say, does he have reading and writing issues?
Definitely writing, yes.
Okay, so to fix that, what I'm showing you, it's the same thing, the same process for ADD, ADHD, and dyslexia. Same process. If we focused on his reading and writing on playing drums, do you think we have his attention? Okay, by having his attention, it's so bad. A lot of times the kid's father has to go out and physically take their book away and tell them they have to come in for this thing called, eating and going to bed. So we completely flip that the speciality in that area of extreme interest and ability. I call that the speciality. Let me give you a quick understanding of just how powerful that is. This is a book I gave to Casey. 900 pages, The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt. She was in 5th grade, reading at the 2nd grade level. I gave her a simple process. She learned how to read that entire book in 6 months. Jumped 8 grade levels. She locked herself in the room for 2 to 3 hours a night. And why am I telling you this? Because her mom wanted to know, is this something that is just for that book? So I said, okay, let's test it on my most popular one. This is it, Walt Disney's biography, The Triumph of the American Imagination, because there are two universal themes that make up the Disney magic. Have you ever been to Disney World or Disneyland?
I've never been there, no.
If you go, there's two universal themes. So Casey found them in 3 months. Typically, it takes 1 to 2 years. And I said, Casey, because I brought her mom on, because I know she'd get a kick out of this. How is Disney's biography? She goes, I hate it. Most motivated kid I ever worked with. I said, okay, here's the punchline why I'm spending so much time on this. Casey, what happened to your motivation when you went to something you loved to something you hated? She said it's down 50%. The most motivated kid I ever met in my life, down 50%. Most kids, you step out of their speciality, you're down 75, 80%. And you wonder why this isn't working. Number two, what I've learned from neurodiverse professors, dyslexics, ADD, ADHD, is that it is horrible for us to learn from the general to the specific. Do you remember in your education, you always started off big picture, and then eventually you got down to the details? For us, it's the worst thing around because it's like grabbing fog. So if you ask a neurodiverse person, in your ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, in your speciality, like for Mike and his drums, do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed? Key question, but with little to no organization. Again, so in your speciality, do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed, but with little to no organization? They're going to say yes. So then what we have to do is we have to force the brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. So again, we have to force the brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. So let me explain what that means. In school, if somebody were to pay you $100,000 to write this essay, what effect did Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech have on the American civil rights movement in the 1960s? You know just what to do. You could go knock that out. For a dyslexic, grabbing fog, we have to ask a specific to a general question. What personally compelled Martin Luther King to want to give his famous speech? We find the information in his biography. That answer gives us a question, which we answer, which gives us a question, which gives us an answer, which forces us to organize our thoughts by using writing as a measurable output. Okay, so then it's word analysis followed by articulation. So speciality, specific to the general, word analysis followed by articulation. Now, what effect does this have on a real kid? Everybody kept asking me. I can't tell them because of privacy concerns. So finally, I talked to a mom and I said, listen, I need you to go public with this. And she said, fine. Her name was Kimberly. We met last December 27th of 2024. Her son, Reed, she homeschools her kids. The state of Ohio just finished testing them a few weeks before. Reed was reading at the 11th percentile. He was writing at the 4th percentile. She did 3 half-hour sessions a week for just under 6 months. At the end of that, I waited throughout the summer. He was tested in public school, in school itself. His reading went up to the 64th percentile. His writing went up to the 65th. She solved it. Why is that important? Because Reed's friends came to him and said, we want you in public school for social reasons, to be with us at lunch and class. If they tried that in January, he would have been put in special ed. Away from his friends, unhappy kid. Now he's in 6th grade getting A's and B's. That's how effective this is. A mom with no academic training taught her son literally 7 times faster than the public school could have.
Wow. Again, that's really impressive. Really impressive. What surprised you the most when you started implementing this program?
What surprised me is just how parents have just had enough. I would constantly have them contact me and they would say, well, we could force the public school through federal court to go and pay for one of these $75,000 a year schools. But by the time we go through the process, in less than a fraction of that time, they could solve it themselves. And it just surprises me that it's just I've been training public school teachers in this in New York City for the past 10 years at the Everyone Reading Conference. I've trained the entire state of New Jersey in this the New Jersey Association of Learning Consultants. They diagnose dyslexia and recommend intervention programs. All right. But it's just so hard to get it into a public school. But parents, it's an easy conversation. I talk to the kids and they're like, what's going on? How did you know this? I ask a series of questions like I gave you. And one of the kids was really suspicious. And I cleared this with his mom, and I finally got to the third question. He's like, how do you know? And his mom said, well, we have hidden cameras all over the house. So we've been watching you for months. He's like, huh? And finally, everybody laughed. He's like, how do you know? I said, well, I was your age one time, back before the internet was invented. Well, not really. It was just not the consumer side. I went through this. He's like, then he finally understood that I finally knew him. He picked out what he was interested in, which was Disney's biography. And, he went through that. It took a little over 2 years. And his reading went from third grade level to junior in high school. And his mom was thrilled. And he did most of the work on his own, quite frankly.
You talk about students' obsession, like anything baseball, Marvel comics, welding even. Those can all be turning points. So can you share a story where a supposed distraction became a breakthrough?
Well, when we're looking at, I would have to say one of my more interesting breakthroughs, his name was Adam. And I'm going back to my original program. He desperately wanted to move up the income ladder. His family was really poor. So financially challenged that he couldn't concentrate. And I said, what's the problem? He said the chair he was on was physically hurting him. So I went to Walmart and I bought the cheapest student chair I could find, $15. And I bring it back to him. He thinks it's like a throne. He was a 19-year-old high school senior. He's held back a couple of times. His teacher said he was a freaking genius. So I give him the GRE writing assessment. Comes back, I'm surprised at the 6th percentile. The professor was a SUNY distinguished professor in psychology. She said, this kid is a freaking genius, but the writing is so bad, he should be banned from college. Professors should not have to deal with this. I never saw her angry before, but I saw it this time. 5 months later, we gave him the GRE, 70th percentile. He went on to a community college, English 101, 102. He ended up he got B's. And then I kept track of him. Now when he finished up, he did those boiler things. So they have a contract for a school district. They have this huge boiler. It's in the summertime. He gets called in out of vacation. He comes in day and a half. He said, sorry, it took me a day and a half to figure this out. Here's what it is. I fixed it. They said they've been trying to figure it out for 3 weeks. So a lot of these kids now in this generation, the Zoomers, Gen Z, they're not going to college. They're going blue collar because it's the quickest way to get to $100,000. But you still have to be able to do a basic 5-paragraph essay because they see problems all the time, and that's how they want to write it up. So we have specific programs designed just to get them to that point so that they can go on, get through a community college, and get out there. Why do I tell my kids to do that? Because I'm just going to give you a local electricians union. You know how much electricians make. It's a lot. But the apprenticeship is 5 years. I tell my kids you're going to go to the local community college for 2 years first. Why? Because locally, they would have, for 5 years, they'd have to go 2 nights a week to get their associate's degrees for 5 years after they worked all freaking day. It's hard on them. So they get through the community college, then they can just leave. All right. And just go home after their strenuous day. Once they're a full union member, now they get paid really well, but also it gets them ready. I try to tell them, go get your bachelor's over time because, I'm 52. All right. Do you want to be welding or being an electrician at our age?
No.
You want to move up to being a foreman. Your education matters. The piece of paper matters. So I try to get them set up so they can do that when and if they want to.
All right. So it seems like confidence is a big part of the puzzle for students. So how do you get them to go from thinking they're stupid to thinking, I can do this?
Okay. What I love doing, I'm just going to give you an example of the more advanced kids that I work with. Are you familiar with a book called The Craft of Research? It's a book that came out from the University of Chicago in 1995. It's now sold over 1 million copies. It was designed because PhD students didn't know how to write their dissertations. It does context, get everybody on the same page, come up with a problem statement, then come up with something original. I cut out 2 steps at the problem statement level so I can focus on one book. I show the kids how to do that. It's literally senior year college. So I show them like on Mice and Men or whatever book that they have to do, and I show them how they come up with something original. So I want you to think about this. You got a dyslexic kid in 11th grade English, not advanced placement, and every paper they turn in, the teacher learns something substantive. Where they said their entire career of 22 years, they might have happened 3 times or 4 times. And it's happening all the time. People are like, what's going on with this dyslexic? All right. And they're like, I show them the full craft of research, and it shocks the heck out of them. They're writing not stylistically, but substantively papers that are 4 years ahead of the best AP English kids. And they're like, you're dyslexic. And they're like, yes, but it doesn't mean that I can't do really evolved writing.
So for you, what was a moment that you remember when you thought, I can change lives with this program?
Well, when I got done with the first kid that I worked with, I have permission to use her name. It's Michaela Miller. She's now past her 20th high school reunion. But we showed her the process. She ended up going from the 0th percentile to about the 50th. She walks into college the first day, and she said, this is exactly what I practiced. I was through it in no time. Like literally, she just typed it up and gave it to the professor. He's like, this is homework. It's going to take you a long time. She's like, no, it's not. I practiced this for, over, hundreds of hours. Huh? And just got an A-. That was the starting point.
When we're talking about families and parents, a lot of homes have nightly homework battles. So how do you coach parents to break those moments into tiny winnable steps?
Well, the main thing that you have to do is get the kid at grade level. So let me give you an example with Reed. His teacher in math liked having them do a lot of writing. Well, now he's at grade level, and actually a little bit above grade level, but he still doesn't like it because he writes slower. He always will. He's a very competitive kid. And they're like, how do we deal with this? And I said, just be a rock. He's a wave. He can smack up against you all he wants. You're not moving. So they just said, Reed, you can write now. You're doing this. Both his teacher and his mom were like that. He fussed. He struggled. He's like, okay, I'll do it. And we haven't heard it. Yeah, that's what happens with well-raised kids. They're going to, like, I keep hearing this all the time. I could do my speciality. I was like, yes, that's during the intervention period. Now you're okay. Well, I don't like this. Well, to give you an example of that, I thought you'd find this interesting. I had a kid who I trained the whole process with in high school. He went on to college. He did his 4 years, did a lot of reports based on the craft of research. Then he got hired in the summer of 2024. His boss loved AI. He hated it. But his boss said, I'm not going to allow you to take 3 hours to draft something when AI can do it in 10 minutes, then you can fix it from there. He wanted to know if the kids could come up with anything innovative that the department could use. So he calls me in a panic. I said, I've trained you in the craft of research. You know how to do AI. Go do the context. Talk to it. Type it. I don't care. I don't care what model you use. He comes back a few days later. Okay, I did context. I said, go do problem. He comes back a few days later. I hate this. I said, welcome to the adult world. Okay. And I said, go do solution. He turned in a 5-paragraph essay the way I trained him. He actually came up with a solution for a little problem they've been having for a long time. It was never worth their time to fix. He fixed it. Within a week after that, he's training his peers in AI, knowing nothing about it beforehand. If you know the craft of research, you can not only deal with AI, you can guide AI, you can teach AI. You'll figure out the little steps because you know how to do evolved problem solving. So the best thing I can say is get the kid to grade level. We can show you how to do that, and then just be a wall, and they will do it. They may not do great with it, but they will do it.
What's the first thing parents need to stop doing when they're trying to help their struggling student?
First thing you need to do is you need to understand that the schools don't know how to work with these kids. I explained to you the model and why it works. So you need to realize you're doing this yourself. You need to pull your kid out and understand we need an intervention period. We need to take them from where they are, and we need to get them at grade level. All right? And I'm not the person to tell you that they're at grade level or anybody else you might hire. That's their teachers. Okay? You don't want to have any other third party tell you that you want your school that your kids are going to tell you when they reach that point. We can show you how to work with your kids through the process. Kimberly did hers in about 5.5 months. Some take a year, some are lesser, some take longer, depending on a few factors. Once you get them to grade level, you can turn them loose and they'll be okay in school.
How can families rewrite their own story about intelligence, ability, and potential?
What you have to realize is that for a lot of things, AI is changing everything. And I don't care if you're a blue collar person, you still have to figure out how to use this. The best thing that I found is to once you get your kids to grade level with writing, the next thing that you need to focus on is getting them to be comfortable using artificial intelligence. Right now, what I try to tell parents is skip OpenAI, go to Anthropic's 4.5, the new one that they just came out with, and focus on that. Focus on having them learn how to go through a process and something that they want to go into. Like, for example, if they're going into welding, there's paperwork involved with that. How can I use AI to help speed things up? If they're going into, let's say they want to go into market research, into marketing, what can they learn to start practicing to start getting that job done, working with the artificial intelligence? Because as a dyslexic, this to me is like having an administrative assistant or a few administrative assistants around, and it makes things so much easier. Okay, so what I try to tell parents is the kids, if they're very good at adopting to AI and get very good at using it, what you're going to find is when they finish up with their education, they're going to be able to be so much more productive. They're going to be able to get a job. Because I'm seeing a lot of kids now graduate with really good majors, with science, engineering, the hard stuff, and they're getting no jobs. They're doing like lifeguarding or waitressing. There's just nothing out there because they expect you to do so much more. When I work with my former students, I say, listen, I showed you how to do the craft of research. Now let's pick out a company that you want. So they pick out a company and say, okay, what exactly do you want? You're going to now solve a problem or draft out a problem that they're having. And you're going to go in there and say, here's what I did. This is how long it took me with the AI. I can continue this immediately if you hire me. Because right now they want these kids to become senior within 6 to 12 months. Like for speech writing, how long did it take you to become competent?
Well, I'd done lots of other writing before then, but I don't know if you ever fully become competent. You get better incrementally.
Right, but how long before
I would say 6 months.
Okay. So how we do that with the kids is I'll have them run a deep research report on anything that they're doing and use that as a guide. And then I'll tell them, do a deep research report in each section. And if it's that important, on each paragraph. All right. And then compare what they're doing against that. And then realize that their job is just to get a good draft and then go to a senior human who will rip it apart and rewrite it. And through that, your learning is drastically accelerated. You make it to where you're productive, really productive after 6, 12 months. You're going to find your salary is going to skyrocket or somebody else will pay you. But if you can't do that, it's horrible out there. And it's just, Anthropic went from $1 billion a year in revenue in January an annual basis. Now it's at 9 billion. It expects to be at 70 billion in 3 years. Where is all that savings going to come from? Reducing white-collar workers that are inefficient. So it's going to be brutal out there. But if you know the craft of research, I've never had a student come back who I taught that properly. I said, well, here's how you adapt. They're like, I'm adapting to this really good. I'm not a great prompt engineer, but I'm doing a lot better than my peers. But I said, yes, because I trained you in evolved problem solving. They haven't. That's the issue. College professors want the kids to know the craft of research before they come to college. And none of the best private schools do it because it's too evolved. I start showing context to 9-year-olds, and I have them thoroughly trained by the end of high school. And parents are doing it. And we've been doing that for years. That's the important point.
Wow. Again, I keep saying that's impressive, but I'm impressed all the way through this conversation. I've been impressed. So what's the process look like when a student realizes it's not their brain that's broken? They just simply need a different starting point.
What they realize is when I ask them, I typically ask 2 questions. In your specialty, do you have ideas flying around your head at light speed, but with little to no organization? The neurodiverse kids always say yes to that. Then when I say, in your specialty, you want to write something, you want to type it, fingers, keyboard. You take the ideas in your head, you take your fingers, put it on the keyboard. Does the idea fly out of your head, leaving you with an empty brain? And that shocks the heck out of them every time. What do you mean? How do you know this? I said, well, that means you're probably severely dyslexic. All right. So what we have to do is for both. We have to start by forcing your brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. What you're going to find for the severe dyslexics is it's going to take you a lot longer, but then you also go a lot deeper. So when I'm dealing with that kid, for example, one of the kids that I was dealing with, I was just like, your teachers tell me you're a genius. He's like, I don't feel like a genius. I fail everything. So we really started focusing on his speciality, and he just made tremendous progress. At the end of my time working with him, I had him working on master level material when he was a junior in high school. And I followed him along. He ended up being accepted to a doctoral program. He already had his idea for his dissertation, not the exact idea, but the general idea before he entered. And that's what I mean with a dyslexic. When we hit grad school, we own the place day one or soon thereafter because it's so specialized. And we've been working on this for so long.
Never ever thought about that. So for my last couple of questions, I want to talk big picture.
Okay.
If you could redesign one part of the American education system, what would that one part be?
Simplest thing in the world. If you're in kindergarten, have the school district contact Yale. Just Google Yale dyslexia. All right, and you're going to get the International Center for Dyslexia and Creativity. And you say, how can we test our kids for dyslexia in elementary school? It's like $40, $50 a kid. The teacher can do it. It's like over 90%. Once you find out they're dyslexic, go back to Yale. How can we teach this dyslexic kid reading and writing so they can pass the 3rd grade reading and writing test? Because K through 3, we learn to read. 4th and above, we read to learn. If you fail that test, it's a 911 academic emergency. If you pass, you're generally going to be okay. Yale can then tell you, here's how you solve this kindergarten through 3rd grade. You're going to be at grade level or close to it. It's the simplest, cheapest way to do this, and very few people do it. And that's why a federal judge, and please note I'm using the word federal judge, when that's not done, they use the term gross negligence. There's one thing I could fix. It would be doing that.
Last question for you today. What's next for your research, your program, and dyslexiaclasses.com?
I'm writing a book with Evelyn White-Bay, who is one of the few teachers on the New York State Dyslexia Task Force. Our preliminary title is going to be Literacy and Dyslexia Reading Turnaround, and it's about Kimberly's story. It's about her hopes, dreams, aspirations, failures, and her final success. So parents can duplicate what she did.
Okay, congratulations on that, and good luck in completing it. And I'm looking forward to maybe following up after you have it completed. You're welcome.
I'll definitely let you know. But as a successful author, you know how much fun it is to write a book. Our first draft is done, but now it feels like we're just getting started.
You are just getting started.
That's why it's great working with Evelyn, because she's one of the best teachers she was specifically selected for the New York State Task Force because she was literally 3 to 4 times more successful. Her kids, literally, her special ed kids, were beating the gen ed kids on passing the state assessment. Yeah, she's special. She's really gifted.
So this has been Stories from Real Life, and we heard some real life success stories today. I'm really impressed. So Russell Van Brocklen reminds us that learning struggles aren't about lack of intelligence, they're about lack of the right starting point. So Russell, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
If you want to learn more about his research or explore his programs, visit dyslexiaclasses.com. And if today's conversation helped you rethink what's possible for a child, a student, or maybe even yourself, share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And if you enjoy these deep human conversations, hit follow and join us next time, where we explore another story that helps us reshape how we see the world. This is Stories from Real Life. Until next time, don't forget to shine your light wherever you go.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Stories from Real Life. Don't forget to subscribe and share. Let's meet right here every Tuesday and Friday. See you then.